Hello everyone, Grantfly here. In this video, we're going to be looking at the matchup between Moneyball Black and Goblins. So I'll be going over some Magic Online Challenge replays to kind of go over the matches against some Goblins opponents, sort of play by play, and try to explain, the decisions I'm making and what I'm doing at each point to try and win versus Goblins. So what are my thoughts on the matchup overall? I'll go over sort of the approach in this introduction, and then we'll get to the matches. It's worth just to note the last match is going to use this list you see in front of you. This is a list I just played in a challenge today where I made the top 4, and I played against Goblins once. This list has 4 Urza's Bauble, which is a combo with Cabal Therapy on turn 1. It can help you know what to name and be more likely to hit with your Cabal Therapy. And then that'll be the last match. And then the first 3 matches are from a challenge back in March that I won, and I played against Goblins 3 times, and that version does not have Urza's Bauble. Otherwise, they're pretty similar. In both cases, I was running Knight of Stromgald in the deck because I am bad at understanding the metagame, and I always add this card to my deck after it's necessary. So I was probably responding to a wave of Enchantress and Replenish, and I was again. I just added it to this deck. I didn't play against either deck at all in either of them where I had this card in my deck. This is a card that's really only good against Enchantress and Replenish. I mean, it can be passable against other things, but that's the only reason you'd want it. Slight tangent there. So the matchup, what do I think about it? The reason I wanted to do this matchup next in the series about Moneyball versus various decks is I think this is another matchup that maybe is not so well understood. Some people have said this is a bad matchup for Moneyball Black. I vehemently disagree with that. I think it's a pretty good matchup. Obviously, you can still lose. You can lose to anything, and Goblins is capable of very busted draws sometimes. But I think if there are vulnerabilities that Goblins has that I think Moneyball Black is very well set up to exploit. So what are those? Basically, Goblins is a deck that is trying to play a bunch of Goblins, which, you might know from the name. And those Goblins have sort of a cumulative gain in power the more of them they are and the more they're interacting with each other. So, for example, Goblin Piledriver, very powerful card, as long as you're attacking with it and a bunch of other goblins. If you're not, it's a Squire. All right, so it took me a second to bring that up, but here's Squire. Squire is a 1/2 for 2 with no abilities. That's what Goblin Piledriver is if it doesn't have other goblins attacking with it. Goblin War Chief. Pretty good card if it's enabling your other goblins to have haste or reducing their cost. But if it doesn't do that, then it's a 2/2. Gray Ogre. 2/2 for 3. Goblin Lackey. Excellent if it connects with your opponent and lets you put a goblin into play for free. But if it doesn't, it's basically a Mons Goblin Raiders. Gem Palm Incinerator. Excellent card if you can use it to cycle and kill an opposing creature and draw a card. If you can't do that, then it's 1 in a red cycle, which is not that powerful. So you see where I'm going with this. You get the picture. And you can probably guess why I think Moneyball Black should be well equipped to beat a deck like that. Because this deck is full of discard and disruption and removal. So it is very well equipped to take out the specific pieces that are threatening in a given game and render the rest of them the worst version of that card they could be, such as turning Goblin Piledriver into a Squire. And in order to win, that is what you need to do. That is the key to winning the matchup and the key to it being a good matchup. You want to take out the cards that are the enablers and leave the cards that need to be enabled in play. They will therefore be not enabled, and they will therefore be not threatening. So to the extent you can turn Piledriver into a Squire and Goblin Lackey into a Mons Goblin Raiders, that will help you win, because it will be as if you have removed those cards without actually needing to spend a card removing them. Hopefully that makes sense. You'll see an example of it in, over and over in these matches. Yeah, so I guess the next thing I'll get into is what cards are good in this matchup. One card that is very notably not good is Duress. This card is a pretty big liability to have in game one because Goblins plays very few non-creature spells, although not zero. The red-green version often plays main deck Naturalize. The mono-red version sometimes plays Lightning Bolt. But for the most part, this card is not going to do much of anything except let you look at your opponent's hand, which can still be relevant because of another card that is very, very good against Goblins, which is Cabal Therapy. So back to what I was saying before, the way to beat Goblins is to keep their synergies from coming together. So Cabal Therapy is great at doing that because it's the most efficient way to take care of certain problematic Goblins and negate all of the effect they would have. For example, if your opponent plays a Goblin Ringleader, they'll get somewhere between 1 and 4 Goblins off of that, say like 1.5 on average or whatever it is. And then you'll have to deal with that card they got, and you'll have to deal with the 2/2 haste. That's a lot of work. A much better way to handle it is to Cabal Therapy away Goblin Ringleader before they can play it. Then you will not have to remove it, and you will not have to deal with any cards it drew because it will have drawn no cards. Same thing with Goblin Matron to a lesser degree, and definitely this applies to Siege Gang Commander, which is probably the scariest card that a Goblins player can have. But fortunately, it's also the most difficult card for them to get into play. Anyway, Cabal Therapy is excellent in the matchup. It can hit the Goblins you're concerned about early, and it can, hit the other ones later. So you can, for example, name Goblin War Chief if they're about to be able to cast that. And then if you have a creature to flash it back next turn, you can name Goblin Ringleader when they're able to cast that. Or Ringleader Siege Gang Commander, or Gem Palm Incinerator, whatever the case may be, whatever is most threatening at the time. Generally speaking, you probably gathered this from what I've said already, I do like to try and name War Chief, Ringleader, Siege Gang Commander, and Gem Palm Incinerator. And I guess sort of Goblin Matron too. Those are like the prime targets, not only because their other targets come down faster, but also because those are the cards that enable Goblin Lackey and Goblin Piledriver to be the best version of what they can be. And if you take away those cards, that's part of the formula of turning those cards into a 1/1 and a 2/2 or a 1/2 with not many abilities. So this card is very crucial in the matchup. It's one of the reasons I think it's a good matchup. If we didn't have access to this card, it would be a lot worse, but we do. So yeah, you'll see some examples of Cabal Therapying in these matches. And obviously, if you're playing Urza's Bauble, that helps Cabal Therapy out quite a lot. But even without Urza's Bauble, if you know you're playing against Goblins, you can still have a pretty good result with Cabal Therapy. Next card, Edict Effects. These are obviously not as great against Goblins as they would be against some other things, because Goblins can throw a Mog Fanatic in the way, throw a Goblin token in the way, throw a Matron in the way, and keep their high priority targets. That said, they're still okay because they can answer a Goblin Lackey on the play if you're on the play. And post-board, once you play Engineered Plague, that will kill some of their Goblins, and you're more likely to be able to hit a good one with an Edict. So they're not amazing. I think in the first few matches I was playing more of a mix between Smother and Edict, but they're not that bad against Goblins, but certainly not not the best. Plague Bear, this is another card that's not really here for this matchup. It can kill some goblin tokens for a single black if you happen to get it into play and there's a siege gang that's made some tokens. But otherwise, its utility is pretty limited. It's pretty hard to kill anything of value with it because it would cost so much mana. So not an amazing card in the matchup. Possibly worth leaving in over some other things, depending on how much you have to board in. Ravenous Rats, pretty good against goblins. Tearing their hand apart is part of the equation of winning. It's a great card, as everybody knows, to flashback a Cabal Therapy with. So, I mean, it is true that it's not the most reliable blocker against Goblin Lackey because it is easy to kill, but still a solid card, still part of the team, worth playing. Smother, slightly better than Edicts because it can kill Goblin Warchief and Piledriver or Lackey, which are kind of the most pressing threats early on in the game. And then later on in the game, typically it's not as important to be able to kill Ringleader or Siege Gang Commander because ideally you've made them discard those cards and they don't have them in play. But obviously if they do, then it can't do that. So that's one drawback. Knight of Stromgald, as I mentioned, this card is not really here for the Goblins matchup. It's there against white. It can get first strike against Goblin, well, against any of the Goblins, but especially Goblin Piledriver. But on the downside is that it has 1 toughness, so it will die to basically anything. Mog Fanatic, Cycled Gem Palm. So yeah, it's not that strong, but it can be serviceable. Nantuko Shade is, much better than Knight of Stromgald, obviously, because it can pump its toughness, so it's harder for them to kill it. And once you have kind of seized control of the game, it is a good way to end the game in a pretty quick fashion. But it is still somewhat vulnerable to their 1 damage spells, to Pyrokinesis out of the sideboard. So definitely a, I don't know, maybe a C+, B- in the matchup. Withered Wretch. So this card is actually, I would say, the best of our 2-drops. Now, this might be confusing because Goblins doesn't use its graveyard at all. So the ability on Withered Wretch is 100% irrelevant. So why would I say this is the best of our 2-drops? It's because of the later 2 in the part of its power and toughness, the 2 toughness. Having 2 toughness, just being a Grizzly Bear, is very good against goblins because all of their goblins are X2s. So it will trade with any of them. It will block a Goblin Lackey. It can't just be plinked out of the way with a Mog Fanatic to allow Goblin Lackey to connect. It's harder to kill it with a Gem Palm Incinerator. And once you have kind of controlled the board and the hand, it can start attacking them. Now, 2 damage isn't like an incredible amount, but it's something, and it's more than 1, and it will get them dead. So for those wondering, can a Grizzly Bear be good in pre-modern? Yes, it can. As long as you are doing other things to control the game, a Grizzly Bear is a vital piece of the equation. I skipped over Ritual and Curse Scroll, so I guess I'll talk about those a little bit. In this build, it's a little weird. I'm only playing 2 rituals because I have the 4 baubles, so it's kind of like you have more rituals than 2. I'm not sure if this is okay. Maybe I should have 3. I don't think it's necessary to play 4 if you're playing 4 baubles, but if you're not, you probably would want to play 3 or 4. Anyway, Dark Ritual is pretty good and pretty important in the matchup because it helps you accelerate out certain cards, and those cards are pretty important. One of them that you probably could guess is Engineered Plague in the sideboard. And another one that you could probably guess is Hypnotic Spectre and Graveborn Muse to a certain extent. But yeah, Dark Ritual is good. Not that much to say about it. Goblins is a fast deck, and this will help you keep up with the speed of their deck. And actually, I guess one more thing to say about it is Goblins is a fast deck, but it also has the ability to grind you out if they get to play a bunch of their heavy hitters like Siege Gang Commander or Ringleader to refill. So you kind of need to have the potential to address things at all phases of the game. So Dark Ritual is really good for that because it just helps you have more ways to answer their early threats and also kind of like establish a Hypnotic Spectre or Graveborn Muse to sort of turn the corner. You'll see what I mean as the video goes on. Another card in sort of the same vein is Cursed Scroll. Now, Cursed Scroll is not great at answering early threats, so it doesn't quite cover that aspect of it, but it is very, very good at locking down the game once you have successfully avoided getting overwhelmed. As I mentioned before, all the goblins, except for Goblin Goon, I guess, are X2 or less, which means that Cursed Scroll will kill almost every single one of them. That's very, very good. Hopefully, it's pretty self-evident why that would be good. And, if they happen not to have any goblins that you need to shoot with it, you can shoot them. And that's also good because, sort of similar to the Sly matchup, you do want to get the game over with once you have avoided not dying and established control. Avoided dying and established control. Because Goblins has good top decks. They have Siege Gang Commander, they have Goblin Ringleader, and things like that. The good news is that Goblins is, I would say, less able to kill you out of nowhere relative to Sly. And so for example, a Cursed Scroll can kind of play cleanup duty on a Siege Gang Commander if they top deck it, but you have plenty of mana to activate Scroll. You can kill the Siege Gang right away. You can untap, maybe kill one of the tokens. So it's less of a code red emergency compared to something like them top decking and Fire Blast out of Sly, which Cursed Scroll can't do anything about. So it's much more effective here, although it's still good against Sly, but it's also, how would I say? It's much more effective in the late game against Goblins than it is against Sly. Although, on the other hand, they do have Naturalize sometimes, so they can kill a Cursed Scroll. So anyway, there's pros and cons, but Cursed Scroll is good, but it's not going to help you that much early on. All right, let's move on to the MVP of the matchup, Hypnotic Spectre. This card is a linchpin of Moneyball Black, and there's certain matchups where it really, really shines, others where it's not quite as impressive. This is a matchup where it really shines. Goblins has no flyers, so it cannot block a 2/2 flying creature. And Goblins has a fairly limited number of ways to kill Hypnotic Spectre. They can kill it with 2 Mog Fanatics. They can kill it with a Mog Fanatic plus a Gem Palm Incinerator, or just a Gem Palm with a bunch of Goblins. But if they don't have a lot of Goblins in play, or you've managed to snipe their Gem Palm, and you're not under a tremendous amount of pressure, you can start attacking with Hypnotic Spectre. And that's really, really good against Goblins because Goblins plays 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 mana spells. And it is a bit of a clunky deck, in my opinion. It's relying on Goblin Lackey and Reshit Import to sort of smooth out its draws, for lack of a better word, by either accelerating expensive Goblins into play or delaying the opponent from doing something. So sort of time walking both players with Reshit Import and then picking up on the next spot in the curve, so to speak. So if it's able to do that, then it's a pretty scary deck to play against. But if you are able to disrupt that, which this deck is full of disruption, then you can really take advantage of the clunkiness of the composition of your typical Goblins deck. By which I mean you have a good shot of eliminating Goblin War Chiefs, Goblin Ringleaders, and Siege Gang Commanders from your opponent's hand with repeated discard from Hypnotic Spectre before they can get these cards into play. And as I mentioned with Cabal Therapy, that is by far the most efficient way to deal with these cards because once they hit play, they bring a bunch of cards with them, either in the form of Goblins off Ringleader or tokens off Siege Gang Commander. So that is by far the best way to answer those cards. And on top of doing that, it also takes care of the problem of winning the game. Because one thing that Goblins can do, as I mentioned before, is top deck their way out of it, out of losing some of their cards once they get enough mana in play. So you do want to get the game over with once you've taken control, and Hypnotic Spectre both takes control and helps get the game over with. And it can also block if it really has to, although obviously you don't really want to be doing that. You don't want to trade it off, but you can if you have to, because it is a 2/2, so it will trade with most of Goblin's creatures. Yeah, so for all those reasons, Hypnotic Spectre is the MVP. And yeah, it's a great card, and this matchup really shows why. Moving on, card I usually play is Snuff Out. Snuff Out has some drawbacks in the pre-modern format. It's not really very good against Enchantress or Replenish for the most part, or the Mono Black Mirror Match for the most part. And it's not ideal against Sly either because of the 4 life, although it can be okay there. So in exchange for that, it had better be really good in the other matchups. And it is, and this is one of the matchups where it's incredibly good. Because as I mentioned, Goblins functions by having an accumulation of Goblins that combine to give the Goblins player a huge advantage. If you can cut off the legs of one of the legs of that stool, the whole thing can sort of crumble. So for example, if they're relying on a Gem Palm Incinerator to kill your blocker, they spend their mana and turn cycling it, and in response you snuff out one of their Goblins. You've basically time walked them and killed a creature. And that kind of tempo play is usually game winning because they were probably planning to have your creature die, and now it didn't. It's also an answer to a turn 1 lackey on the draw, as if it needed to be any better. So yeah, it's also very good against Dreadnought and various green Terravore type decks. So it's a pretty volatile card, but this is one of the matchups where it shines. Graveborn Muse, pretty good in the matchup. However, it's not like an A+ because, as I mentioned, Goblins does play Rishon and Port. It does play Wasteland sometimes. So if you can get this in play, it's usually pretty good, but they have a lot of ways to mess with your mana. And that's why I don't really love playing, one of the reasons I don't really love playing 3 of them, and even 2 is, I think, borderline. Just because it is 4 mana, and playing a 4 mana spell is not trivial, especially when your opponent's messing with your lands. And the opportunity cost, there's some opportunity cost because you could be playing something else that would have more of an immediate impact. And you kind of need to blunt the early assault of a Goblins deck before this card will really be relevant. I suppose there could be draws where you get to like ritual it out, and the blocking, its ability to block as a 3/3 could be helpful, but for the most part, you're going to have to play your other cards first and probably use your ritual first. So yeah, it's don't get me wrong, it is good. It's not like a bad card in the matchup, but it is 4 mana. So take that as you will. Okay. And finally, to wrap it up, this build is weird because I'm only playing 3 Mishra's Factories and 1 Wasteland because of the Urza's Baubles. But both of those cards are pretty good against Goblins. Mishra's Factory is an extra blocker, which is pretty relevant. Obviously, you don't really want to try and block with Mishra's Factory early in the game because if they do kill it, it can be pretty bad. But it's very useful to have later on when both decks are kind of maybe flooding out or low on resources. Having a land that can turn into a creature is pretty valuable. Spawning Pool, same general idea. Wasteland, pretty good at dealing with their Rishon imports, and it's not unusual for their non-basics to be more of a liability than a benefit for them because, like I said, they have a lot of expensive cards. So if you can Wasteland them on a key turn to keep them from playing one of those cards, usually that ends up being better for us because it just gives more, like if you have any kind of advantage, it gives you another turn of that advantage. If that makes sense. For example, Hypnotic Spectre attacking or something. So Wasteland's pretty good in the matchup. Moving briefly to the sideboard. I think the sideboard contains most of the cards I would typically play. Trying to think if there's any others that are worth discussing. Sometimes people play Masticore. You can check my my comprehensive deck guide for my thoughts on Masticore. I don't really like it very much in the deck, is the short version. But this is one matchup where it probably would be pretty solid. I don't really think it's necessary, but it would probably be good here. Another card people play sometimes is Bane of the Living. Bane of the Living is probably pretty good against goblins, I would imagine, because it can sweep up a bunch of goblins. The way the matchup usually goes, that's not always that relevant, but I haven't really found it to be necessary, for lack of a better word, but you know, it would help if you had access to it. That wouldn't be bad. So having mentioned those two, to move on to the cards I actually have in my sideboard, won't take very long. Torment's Crypt, Dystopia, and Gloom do nothing against goblins, so don't bring them in. Sometimes people bring in Powder Keg against goblins. I've seen that. I don't really think that's a great idea. It doesn't, as I mentioned, goblins decks have goblins that are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 mana. And Powder Keg is very, very bad at killing anything really that's more than 2. And even killing 2-drops with it is a bit sketchy in my opinion. Plus they have Naturalized to destroy it before you might be able to kill a 2-mana card with it. So, and if you needed another reason, it's too slow to kill a Goblin Lackey before it hits you for either, even if you're on the play. So yeah, so it's not good. So don't bring it in. Vendetta is good. This matchup is why I'm playing Vendetta instead of Funeral Charm. Actually, it's only one of the reasons. The other reason is that Vendetta can kill a Phyrexian Dreadnought and Funeral Charm cannot. But this matchup is the other reason that I really like Vendetta over Funeral Charm, because it can kill any goblin later on in the game and not just a Goblin Lackey. So that's pretty useful because killing Goblin Warchief especially is pretty important. So Vendetta has the ability to do that, in addition to having the ability to kill a Goblin Lackey turn 1 on the draw. So bring that in. Edict is a dealer's choice on whether that's worth bringing in, depending how much you have to take out and what you want. I talked about edicts already. They're okay, but not great. Drain Life, I think, is actually usually worth bringing in. It can, like I mentioned, most of the goblins' creatures are kind of small, so Drain Life has a decent chance to be able to kill one of them. It's not a great early answer to a Goblin Lackey, for example, but often goblins can get you kind of low before you stabilize, so Drain Life can also be helpful for getting a little bit of life back. I'm not like 100% sure that it's worth bringing in Drain Life here, but I think it's okay. And let's move on to the star of the sideboard in this matchup, Engineered Plague. This is, combined with Hypnotic Spectre and Cabal Therapy, one of the reasons I think this is a actively good matchup for Moneyball Black. And in this list, I happen to only be playing 3, but for the first 3 matches you see, I will have had 4 in my sideboard. This card is the best card against goblins, period, because goblins only plays goblins, and that's the creature type you can name with this card, and you will kill a lot of them, and you will shrink the rest of them. Sure, they can have Naturalize. They're going to have some answers, Goblin King. You know, they'll have ways to deal with it in their deck, but first of all, having a way in your deck to deal with something and having it in your hand are 2 different things. And this deck, Moneyball Black, does not give the opposing deck the luxury of waiting around forever to draw the answer, because we're putting pressure on their hand with Therapy and Hypnotic Spectre. So they kind of just have to play their goblins, and once they do, you can kill them with Engineered Plague, or even before they do sometimes. So yeah, it's the best card. You should play 3 or 4 of them. It will help you win the matchup. And one other thing to note is that if they have Naturalize, for example, as an answer, you might be seeing their hand in advance, so you might know about that. Maybe you can play around it. Maybe you can take it out with Cabal Therapy. Maybe you can take it out with Hypnotic Spectre. So having a reactive answer like Naturalize is not ideal against a deck full of discard, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And that is why I've found Engineered Plague to be pretty effective, even though Goblins decks might have some Naturalizes or Tranquil Domains or whatever. The other thing I've noticed is that when they board in those cards, it does seem like the ringleaders get bad and much less effective. So I don't exactly know how a Goblins deck is supposed to sideboard, but if they take out Goblins, the ringleaders get worse. So I've kind of touched on this already, but just to go over the overall strategy. Step 1, don't get hit by Goblin Lackey. That's pretty much every deck's step 1 against beating Goblin, in order to beat Goblins. That's what you would want to avoid. Does that mean I always mulligan a hand without a way to kill Goblin Lackey? No, it doesn't. I think this deck is not that well served by mulliganing super aggressively because it's full of 5.5 out of 10s, and you need a certain number of those just in terms of raw quantity in order to win. So if you, for example, mulligan to 5 and you get an answer to a turn 1 Goblin Lackey, but your hand isn't functional, that's the kind of hand that a Goblins deck can beat by just playing a bunch of Goblins and killing you normally. That said, we do have a decent number of ways to deal with the Goblin Lackey, especially on the play, or ramping ahead with Dark Ritual. So out of all the decks that might face off against Goblin Lackey, we are pretty adept at dealing with it if it enters play. Post-board, we get even more, and we get more of an ability to withstand a Goblin Lackey that has actually connected in the form of Engineered Plague. I still don't really recommend letting that happen, but if you do, it's not necessarily the end of the world after sideboarding. But I would still prioritize not getting hit by it. Okay, so step 1, that's step 1. Now let's say you've done that. The next step, it's a bit less, it's less straightforward than playing against Sly, for example. But generally speaking, and I've sort of mentioned this earlier on in the video, I like to, if I can, avoid spending a removal spell on Goblin Piledriver and try to turn it into a Squire. And the way you can try and turn it into a Squire, there's a few ways, some of which overlap with each other. The key one is to get rid of all their other goblins, usually by discarding them, but potentially also using a smother on a Goblin War Chief or something. The best way to do that is with repeated Hypnotic Spectre hits. Second best way to do that, if you have to, is just trade it off with a Withered Wretch or a Knight or whatever if you can. And the third best way, I guess, is to play Graveborn Muse and try and match them in terms of their card advantage, but I don't recommend that if you can help it, because Graveborn Muse is it's more of a finisher than it is a really effective way to go toe-to-toe with goblins. So what I mean is if Graveborn Muse is drawing you 1 extra card, but they have a board of Piledriver plus War Chief, and they play a Ringleader and draw 2 goblins or whatever, the cumulative effect of those goblins is probably going to be better than the 1 extra card you got off Graveborn Muse. So on the other hand, if it's just Graveborn Muse facing down a Goblin Piledriver 1v1, then that's going to turn out well for you. But Graveborn Muse itself is not the determining factor there. The determining factor was you having gotten rid of all their other goblins. So you kind of need to do that first. And Graveborn Muse can sort of help you do that, but if they get out way ahead of you, then it's not going to be enough to make up for it usually because of just the tempo advantage they might have. So having a Grizzly Bear is very effective. Having a repeatable discard flyer hitting them is very effective. Obviously, post-board Engineered Plague is very effective. So yeah, go after War Chief, Incinerator, Ringleader, and Siege Gang Commander. Try and make their other goblins into Mons Goblin Raiders or Squire, and turn the corner and kill them before they can recover. Curse Scroll will help with that. Spectre will help with that. Shade can help with that. And that's the key to beating goblins. So you kind of have to play a control role and then switch to an aggressive role, control aggro, similar to Sly, although the cards that are priorities are different and the value of discard is different. So yeah, that's the general strategy. If you see it in the matches, it'll probably make a lot more sense. So we'll go on to the matches. If you like this sort of in-depth overview, please subscribe, and or leave a comment. It will help my channel to get more popular. and we'll see you for the first match. All right, I'll be clicking through bit by bit here. Okay, so in the dark, I don't know what I'm playing against. This is a good hand, assuming I kept. And do I fire off? The question is, do I fire off the therapy blind here or not? Looks like I just passed. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of tough to just fire off a turn one totally blind Cabal Therapy, which is one of the reasons I like to move to, I'm kind of favoring the Urza's Baubles lately. You know, sometimes it's still a good idea to do it, but kind of depends what else you got going on. With a hand like this, I have the ritual, so I can kind of make up for any sort of speed downgrade that I've done by passing up on the ritual. Anyway, let's see what my opponent has going on here. They play a mountain, they play a Goblin Lackey. Probably not a surprise given the matchups that we know I'm going to be looking at. All right, so what do I draw? Another Dark Ritual. So, all right, we're now faced with our first decision of the game. I could spend a ritual to therapy plus wretch plus scroll or something like that. But there's not really an urgent need to play therapy because, like I said, the thing you want to try and do in this matchup is turn Piledriver into a Squire and try to ignore it as much as possible. So what I'm going to instead, and by not playing it right now, I give myself one more turn. I give them one more turn to draw a card, and therefore have an increased chance of hitting an extra card with it. Plus, I just get more information about what I want to do. So my guess is I just play Withered Wretch because they cannot kill it on their next turn. They might be able to kill it after that, but they can't do it yet. Okay, so they play a port and they pass the turn. They port me on my upkeep. I draw an Antico Shade. So I have some options here. Probably what I would do is, I mean, essentially, I could just wasteland their port. Now I could take a shot with therapy and pass the turn. They still can't kill my wretch, so we're kind of just like, it'll be as if we've both been time walked, kind of, but they'll have drawn an extra card for therapy to potentially hit, and I'll get rid of their port, which will make it more likely for me to be able to play Nantuko Shade and leave up a pump with it, or whatever else I might want to do with the mana. So I'm guessing that's what I do here. Let's see. No, I play Dark Ritual and I therapy. Okay, interesting. Oh, I should have reviewed what I named first, what I might name first, but I guess I named Goblin Warchief. That's reasonable, because it's the card that they could play soonest. And I guess if they have like a Mog Fanatic or something, I'm not really going to want to play this Shade. But I guess I also could play it and use it to flash back and try and render the Mog Fanatic useless. So that's one strategy. Anyway, so I did name Warchief. They do have a Fanatic, and they do have a Gem Palm Incinerator. So good to know. And this is their hand. So given this information, I just realized I could also play the scroll and kill Lackey with it. I didn't even see that till just now. So I play another Dark Ritual, I have 4 mana, then a Wasteland, I have 5 mana. I'd kind of be spewing a mana, but it would get the job done of killing the Lackey. So that could be an interesting thing to do. Then I can just see what happens later. So yeah, if we were where I am in this position, what would I do? I'd probably just take out Lackey and Wasteland them. Then I can decide what else I want to do later. Let's see what I did. Okay, it looks like I did play Scroll, play Wasteland, Scroll the Lackey, and Wasteland the port. Yep. So that's pretty strong. Gives me some time to not have to worry about their cards for a while. All right, so they draw another port, they play it, they pass the turn, which is a bit annoying. They tap my land, I exile a card for no reason. I do draw another swamp, which is pretty lucky. So I could play that. I could play Shade. It would just die to Mog Fanatic, which is an ideal. If they play Mog Fanatic, they would get to cycle Incinerator and use it to kill my Wretch. So it's possible I just take out Incinerator here with my shade, but it's also defensible to not do that. Looks like I just pass. I guess I'm hoping to find a better, maybe I'm figuring I just need to take out Ringleader, so I just need to wait to do that. They play Foothills and they don't play Fanatic, which is, I guess makes sense because I could just kill it, but it's a little interesting. They tap my land, I let that happen. I draw Hypnotic Spectre. So now I think I'm kind of obligated to probably take out the Ringleader with one of these creatures. Most likely the Shade, because it's harder to get it to live. Attack for 2. Let's see if that happens. Yeah, I play Shade. I guess I was just hoping to be able to draw a Rats and play that instead, but it didn't occur. So I sack the Shade to Therapy, Ringleader presumably. Yep. But now I've learned that they have Siege Gang Commander, which is pretty scary. So I pass it over. They fetch. I'm not sure is a great idea because I think they want a land for Siege Gang, but that's what they did. Then they play Mog Fanatic, and they cycle Incinerator, targeting my Wretch. Finish it off with a Mog Fanatic. So those are gone. They have a land. It's a mountain. So that means next turn they're going to get to play Siege Gang Commander, which is scary, but I do have the scroll to kill it. I draw Swamp. So I just go ahead and play my Spectre, and I play the land, which kind of makes sense because they do have Risha and Port around. They play Carplusian Forest, and they play a Siege Gang Commander. There it is. So I draw for the turn. It's a Factory. I use Scroll to shoot Siege Gang Commander. Then I play Factory, or well, then I attack, I guess, first. So that's gone. Let's see what else we got. I hit a Skirk Prospector. So now we're in the phase of the game where I've traded off some resources. I've kept them from playing Ringleader to get card advantage, and I have Scroll to take care of the scary part about Siege Gang Commander. They do still have 3 Goblins, but they're not going to beat me just with 3 Goblins. They have 1 card in hand. So now it's just kind of a matter of who's going to top deck better. They probably have better top decks overall, but I have a bigger advantage on the board. So that's the kind of scenario that you want to be engineering as the Moneyball Black deck. Go ahead and play my Factory and pass the turn. I mean, they have Port to deal with Factory, but that would tie up their mana. So like even though it seems like they have this Factory dealt with, it still is good. They play Goblin Warchief. Pretty good card, but not like, the end of the world. And then they play land. So that's all they got. So they proactively tap my Factory and get in for 5 damage. Go to 15, draw, another Factory. Great draw. Incredible draw. So we got to keep the pressure on. We scroll their Warchief to reduce their clock. Oh, I decided to play my Factory. Yeah, no, that makes sense. I was going to say I'm able to block all their Goblins, but I think attacking makes way more sense actually, because we are currently ahead in the race. So we're getting in for 5 here, and we have the scroll. So this will get the game over with very quickly and really puts the pressure on them. It's going to be hard for them to draw anything to race us at this point unless they go like Ringleader into Piledriver and a bunch of other stuff, or maybe another Siege Gang or something. But I don't even think that would do it. Okay, they do play a Ringleader, so we get a little bit of a sweat. And they do, wow, they revealed 2 Piledrivers. All right, so my decision to try and get the game over with as soon as possible is looking smart here. They play one of the Piledrivers, and they get in with their attack. No, they want to leave back the Goblin tokens, because if they attacked with everything and I scroll their Piledriver and draw a land, I would kill them. But I don't know, I feel like they could have gotten in maybe with a couple of 1 or 2 of these, but I don't know. Okay, they decide okay, they did get in with one of them. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so now I am faced with a decision. I draw Spawning Pool. So I think the play here is certainly attack with Spectre. Do I bother scrolling the Piledriver, or do I just scroll their face? It's possible I just scroll them, because I have 2 ways to block Piledriver, and they can only attack for 5 with the rest of their stuff. And then that puts them to 2 if I attack and scroll. So then even if they kill my Hypnotic Spectre, they're dead to the scroll. They would have to kill Hypnotic Spectre and naturalize the scroll, which I don't think they can do unless they draw. If they draw exactly, no, I know they're 2 cards, so they can't really. They could go Incinerator into naturalize. That's what they would need, but it's pretty unlikely. So I'm guessing that's what I did, because if I scroll the Piledriver, they could Siege Gang plus a land. I guess I can attack with Spectre first and see what happens. Yeah, looks like that's what I'm doing. If they discard the Siege Gang, then I definitely don't need to worry about it. They do. All right, so hopefully the utility of Hypnotic Spectre is on full display here. And I guess since I know this game's going to be over with pretty soon, I don't need to scroll on my turn. I can wait to see what happens. So I pass the turn with the pool in hand. They play another Piledriver. This way I can kill a War Chief if I really have to. Just play a Mog Fanatic. So, I mean, now I know that they can't win. They can't win in time. So it doesn't really matter what I do here. I could block with the Factory. I could scroll the Piledriver. Either way, it's going to be a win. Looks like I decide to block the Piledriver. Tap it down. Activate my Factory. I block the Piledriver, and yeah, my opponent concedes. So let's take a look at game 2. I should add, in terms of sideboarding, I would always take out the 4 Duress just because there's not that many targets. Even though opponents can board in Pyrokinesis and naturalize Tranquil Domain, I still don't think it's worth having Duress in the deck after sideboarding. And then in terms of what other cards to cut, if you're playing something that's not very good against red, like Knight of Stronghold, you could cut some of those. You could trim on Edicts, although they're not horrible. You probably should take out Plague Bearer. The more I think about it, the more I think Plague Bearer may even be worse than Knight of Stronghold. It's tough to say. It probably is worse, although it's easier to cast. Anyway, cut the marginal, some marginal creatures to fit in the rest of the cards you want. All right, so this opening hand has 6 lands and a Wretch. This probably has to be a mulligan. It's just simply too slow. It doesn't have any action. This hand has Therapy, Edict, Ritual, Shade, Hippie. So this hand is pretty good. Sucks that I have to put a card back. And it's kind of hard to know what to put back. If they open with a turn 1 Lackey, I will need the Dark Ritual in order to have any chance of dealing with it. So probably, unfortunately, the card you have to put back here is Shade, because Spectre is just better, and you need the Ritual. You might need the Edict. I mean, I guess you could make an argument for putting back the Edict, but Shade just dies to so many things that it's probably Shade. Let's see what I did. Yeah, I put back Shade. All right, so let's see what they got going on here. Do they have the Lackey? They do. All right, that's annoying. We draw Graveborn Muse. So here I am faced with a choice. Do I Therapy and then try to Ritual out a Muse? Do I Ritual Therapy plus Edict? Do I Ritual a Spectre and just hope that they don't have Pyrokinesis to kill it? Given everything in my hand, I probably would go for Ritualing out Spectre here, but I can't say there's any one right answer in this particular scenario. Different things could lose to different cards out of my opponent, depending on what they have. Let's see what I did. Play Ritual, I play Spectre. Yeah, I think that's overall the best play. It just has the best risk reward, I think. But it certainly could go badly. All right, so they play a port, and they don't attack. So they didn't have something that would make it, that could clear my Spectre out of the way. But they are going to port me, which is pretty good here, because I have this Chainer's Edict that I now cannot play. So they port me, I draw a Withered Wretch, and now I'm faced with the choice, well, it's not really much of a choice, actually, because I'm just going to play this Therapy, and then that will inform what I do. So what's the scariest card they could have here? Potentially Gem Palm Incinerator, potentially Goblin War Chief. I guess those are the 2 big ones. I think Ringleader I can take care of a little bit later. So I'd probably name one of those 2. And in order for Incinerator to be a real problem, it would have to hit my... They would have to have a 1-mana Goblin to go with it, which they could, but it's kind of a tall order. So I'd probably name Warchief here. Let's see what I name. I named Warchief, and I did hit. And their hand is Port, Naturalized, Matron, Tranquil Domain. So you can see they boarded in a lot of anti-plague cards, but not only do I not have a plague, but they don't have green mana. So this hand is clearly a really nice thing for me to see here. They don't really have any threats. And now I'm faced with the decision of, do I actually just like let this thing, do I actually just get in with Spectre and let this lackey hit me? But I think I still don't, because if they play Matron, then they'll have to tap out and I can play a creature and hit whatever's left. Whereas if they get to hit me with the lackey, they can put Matron into play, which can then go get another card. Now, of course, there is the chance I am able to Spectre it away, which would be the best thing I could do. My mana is being sort of harassed here, but if I just draw one more swamp, then I have Withered Wretch to block Lackey. So I probably just have to pass, but let's see what happens. Yeah, I just have to pass. It's tempting to attack, but I think it's better to not attack, ultimately. They play their Port. They're going to tap out for their Matron. Right, there it is. That makes my Edict pretty horrible. They go get a Gem Palm Incinerator to try and kill my Hypnotic Spectre. Reasonable. They still can't attack. I draw Engineered Plague. Great draw, eventually. However, I'm tight on mana right now, so I have to figure out what to do here. Their Port's gone. They have 4 cards in hand. I could play Wretch and Wretch away Gem Palm and just kind of hope they don't draw any Goblins to put in with Lackey or play otherwise. I do feel like I'm falling behind a bit here. I think letting them Gem Palm my Spectre is not a viable option. So I guess I just would play Wretch and hit their Gem Palm and then see what I'm dealing with after that. So I do play Wretch, and I sacrifice it to Flashback Therapy, naming Gem Palm Incinerator, presumably. That is what I named. They did have another Goblin Matron. All right, so if I attack here, they can just, and I don't hit the Matron, they can Lackey in a Matron and then go get Incinerator and incinerate my Spectre. So once again, I think I cannot afford to attack. So yeah, I just have to pass. They play another Matron, and they go get another Gem Palm. So we've just been in a holding pattern here for like 3 turns where they keep getting Incinerator and I keep getting it out of their hand, or I keep getting some card out of their hand. But in order to do that, they had to tap out for Goblin Matron, meaning that if I drew a land, I could play Engineered Plague, which I did. So I play land and I play Engineered Plague. And all of a sudden, the game is over, because now their Incinerator doesn't do anything. And even if they draw, a green land to kill the Plague, it's got a 3-for-1, and they kind of have nothing going on now. Hypnotic Spectre gets in, it hits a Tranquil Domain, they do draw Forest, they do kill the Plague, but the damage is sort of done. They could theoretically come back, but it's going to be tricky. And you'll notice this Edict, even though it wasn't very good early on there, it's now turned back on because we got to Plague away 3 of their 1/1s. So they tap Factory, I draw another Engineered Plague, I get in with Spectre, and I take out a Wasteland. So now their hand is Incinerator and something. They play Goblin Piledriver. All right. So that means I'm going to get their Incinerator. They tap Factory, I draw another Spectre. Would love a land, but I don't have one. I go ahead and Chainer's Edict them because my man is being harassed greatly with these Rishan imports, so I want to just like make use of this while I can. I have plenty of cards to play. I get in with Spectre, and they lose their Incinerator. They draw land, they pass the turn, they tap Factory, they tap a Swamp, draw a Therapy, which doesn't do anything at the moment. Get in with Spectre, which does do something. They go find a land, they draw another land. So we're basically in a holding pattern, but I'm getting in for 2 with Hypnotic Spectre every turn. I draw a swamp. That's good. That gets me part of the way there. Get in with Spectre. They draw they draw Siege Gang Commander. Pretty good card. However, this means I get my lands back. I draw Wasteland. So now I can, I guess, Wasteland a port and play Engineered Plague. Yeah, I mean, I basically have to play Plague right now. There's not really any other option. Go ahead and do that. Get rid of their 1/1s, get in for 2, and they decide to concede at that point. They could have kept playing for a little bit. Obviously, it wasn't looking great. They could have killed my Hypnotic Spectre. Any 1-mana Goblin or X1 Goblin is just going to die, so they would, They would fling it at my Spectre, tap my land, I'd play a Hypnotic Spectre. You know, yeah, it wasn't a good situation for them by any means, so their chances of coming back realistically were basically 0. So you see the utility of Hypnotic Spectre. It held off a bunch of goblins for a while, and then it mowed down their hand, including one of the naturalize effects, so that the second Engineered Plague could stay in play. You know, there were some windows there where if they had had a red land or a second red source plus a 1/1 for 1 plus an incinerator, they could have cleared away my Spectre. Or if they'd had pyrokinesis or something, plus some extra cards, you know, something useful to put in off the lackey, I could have been in trouble. But they didn't have the cards come together in the right way. So we were able to kind of hold them off for a little bit and then land a Plague and remove the rest of their hand with Hypnotic Spectre. So that's kind of that's the way you want it to play out. All right, we'll be back for the next match. Okay, so the next match was a little bit later in the tournament. I draw this hand. This is not a great hand, but given if I don't know what I'm playing against, I could see it being a keep. I probably would be inclined to keep. Looks like I did. But it's not going to go great against Goblins because I'm going to duress and, actually hit a card. I do hit a naturalize, which is pretty unlucky, but unlucky for them. I see Ringleader, Piledriver, Siege Gang, and some lands. So that's a bit scary because I don't have a ton of things to deal with those cards right now. They play a mountain. I draw another Knight of Stromgald, absolutely wretched in this matchup. And I guess, yeah, I just play it for mana efficiency sake because I don't really want to therapy a Piledriver anyway. So they play a mountain, they play a Piledriver, I draw a Diabolic Edict, which isn't bad. So now I can go ahead and therapy. I guess I would name Ringleader because I know they have it and that's the one they're closest to being able to play. So they lose their Ringleader and I see they have a bunch of Reshit imports. I could attack and allow them to make a mistake and block and give my guy first strike, but I'm just going to assume that isn't going to happen. So I just go ahead and edict them. I don't want to play as Knight of Stromgald and leave this in play because they could draw Gem Palm Incinerator and kill one of them and draw a card. And I don't want them to be able to do that if I can help it. So I get in with Knight, pass it over. They play a Reshit import, and they're going to tap one of my creatures, or one of my lands, sorry. So I could pump my Knight here, but yeah, maybe I might do that because most likely my play is just going to be playing another Knight. But on the other hand, that would keep me from playing a Hypnotic Spectre if I drew it, which would be the best thing I could play. So I probably don't pump. Looks like I did pump. I think that's actually probably a mistake, but it's what I did. Lucky for me, I didn't draw a Spectre. Instead, I drew Ravenous Rats, which is like the best card I could have drawn in this particular turn. So I get in for 3, and I play Rats. No, I played Knight. Oh, okay, yeah, I play Knight because I'm definitely going to name Siege Gang Commander, and they can't play it next turn. So I might as well give them one more turn to draw an extra copy, which I could then hit. They play Port and tap. And now I can't pump because then they would tap an extra land and I wouldn't be able to play Rats. So I just float a mana. They should just go to my draw step and make me burn the mana. And that is what they do. I draw a swamp. So now when they tap my other land, I know that I can pump because I can play land and play rats. All right, so they do that. I pump one of them. I get in for 5. These knights are actually doing some work. Not as much as a shade would do, but still something. I play a rat. Now, what they probably should do is discard Siege Gang because I'm 100% going to flashback therapy on Siege Gang. Let's see if they did that. They didn't. Yeah, they probably should have done that. So I flashback rats, or flashback therapy, sacrificing rats, named Siege Gang. I mean, I guess since their hand's so bad, maybe their only hope is that I make a mistake somehow and fail to remember that I have a Cabal Therapy in my graveyard. Alas, 'twas not to be for them. So they draw and they play Ringleader, which is pretty good. Ringleader reveals a couple goblins, including a Fanatic and an Incinerator. Not bad. And actually, they can play a land and they can play a Fanatic right now. So that's pretty solid. They get in with the Ringleader. It's a little aggro, but I guess it's understandable. So now I draw Chainer's Edict. I keep attacking with my knights. They're going to block one and shoot the other, presumably. Yep, that is what they're doing. And then I just Edict. So the good news is their Fanatic's gone. Their Gem Palm will not kill my knight unless they have another creature. The bad news is they do have a lot of other creatures, so it's well within the realm of possibility. And you're seeing the downside of Knight of Stromgald versus Nantuko Shade here. I play a Foothills. All right, looks like they didn't find anything quite yet. They tap a swamp. I pump my knight because I have nothing else going on. They tap another swamp. I pump my knight again. And I think in this spot it's okay to do that because they were going to tap 2 of my lands anyway and I have nothing else to play. And if I pump the knight at all, like if I let this mana go and then they tap during my draw step, then I have to not pump it again. So I'm missing out on 1 damage. Yeah, I don't know. It's close. Maybe I should have done that. But in any case, I didn't. I mean, this is a pretty fair amount of damage, and it's getting to the point where I might be able to finish them off with the Curse Scroll. I draw a rat, so I'm not going to be able to play that. I mean, they do have a card to insulate their Incinerator, which I'm assuming is just a land, but I can't play the rats because I did it that way. So they get to take their turn. They draw Goblin King, and now they can cycle and kill my knight. It's pretty rough. They are at 6, but my knight is gone and I now have no pressure. They fetch and play a lackey, which is now a 2/2. Interesting, they didn't get a forest at any point here. Maybe they only had 1 naturalized main deck. I don't know. I feel like they could have afforded to do that. I draw Factory, which is pretty strong. So I just play rats and I play my Factory. Oh, I get their other naturalized. All right, I guess maybe they just knew I was going to discard it. All right, so there's Factory. They can now get in with their creatures. I could try to block with Factory. They will tap it. And not really in the mood to chump, so I just take it. If they got me, they got me. I mean, they have enough mana to play pretty much anything anyway. Like they put in a Goblin Sharpshooter. It's pretty strong. So now things are looking quite bad for me, despite getting some damage in with the knights. They tap Factory. I draw Hypnotic Spectre. So my rats is just going to die. I guess I missed my chance to chump block with it. They kill the rat. They shoot me. And they've drawn a Gem Palm Incinerator. So that is probably going to do it. They draw into War Chief for good measure, and all of a sudden, I am extremely dead. I draw a Shade. It's actually a pretty good draw, but I was still dead, because even if I block, I take 4. This dies, they shoot me, untap, shoot me again. So that was game 1. So in that game, the disadvantage of having Knight of Stromgald over Nantuko Shade was on full display, since they just died to a bunch of damage goblin spells. Whereas if those were Nantuko Shades, at least one of them would have lived, and I had a bunch of mana available. So, but it does improve after sideboard. This hand has 2 E-Plagues and the ability to deal with a turn 1 lackey, so that is a keep. Also has some lands to withstand various porting and whatnot that they might be doing. They mull to 6, just play a swamp and pass. They do play a lackey. So, you know, it's tempting to let this connect because I can kill it with Plague, but I really don't think it's not a play I'm allowed to make. So I just play Factory, I pass, and we'll see what they do. They play a Wasteland. Okay, so good to know, because now if I tried to block with Factory, they would just Wasteland it, so I simply have to smother instead. So that's what I do. They kill my Factory, and we're back. I think I just play a swamp here, yeah, to try and avoid getting my Factory wastelanded again. I don't know. It could have been okay to play Factory there, but I'm not really planning on activating it for a little bit, so I don't think it's a huge downside. They play a port. They port my swamp, draw Withered Wretch. So I guess this was the advantage. Not that they probably would have ported Factory if I played it, but if for some reason they didn't, then I wouldn't have been able to play this double black creature. So that's what I play this turn. No real reason to play the Plague yet and use a ritual since I don't really have to. They just play a land and pass. They port me. I exile a Goblin for fun. I draw another Dark Ritual. Okay, get in for 2. And now I play a Factory and probably just pass. So one cool thing that I could do is double Plague if they play a 2/2 or an X2. Now, it's a little bit mana inefficient. I could have just played a Plague, but then they could just disenchant it and then it won't have done anything. So it's nice to be able to try and kill a creature with it if you can. They play a Carpathusian Forest and they tap out for a Ringleader. So there it is. They reveal 4 lands. Rough. But that does happen sometimes. So those all get put on the bottom. They get a 4-mana 2/2 for their trouble. And they do get in. I think I just played my Factory, so I cannot block. I guess this is where I get a little bit punished for not playing Factory earlier. And I draw Graveborn Muse. So I could play Graveborn Muse plus Plague, or I could play 2 Plagues. And those are my options. So most likely I would just play a Plague plus Graveborn Muse because they can't really punish me too badly because I don't think they can deal with the Plague and kill my Graveborn Muse. Because any 1-mana Goblin they would play to enable Incinerator would just die. So they have to spend 2 mana to deal with the Plague, and then they play a 1-mana thing, cycle Incinerator, it still doesn't kill Graveborn Muse. So the only real way they could deal with it is Pyrokinesis, but that could deal with it anyway. So I think that's the play. Oh no, I'm wrong. I just play Graveborn Muse. That's a little risky because they could play 2 Goblins and incinerate my Muse. I mean, it's not super likely, but it's possible. I guess I just really wanted to play both of these Plagues at the same time or get them to play more creatures. It's a little bit of a risky play, but it's what I did. And I didn't attack with Wretch. That's also somewhat questionable. I think I probably should have attacked because I don't think I really want to block because I want to draw the extra cards, but okay, they incinerate my Wretch. They're just going to double incinerate my Withered Wretch. Yeah. All right, well, that gets rid of my Wretch, but it doesn't deal with the Graveborn Muse, which is the main thing here. They do play a Lackey. So now I'm going to get rewarded a little bit for not playing the Plague. I can get 2 Goblins of theirs. I draw a Wasteland and a Swamp. So yeah, I guess I'm just going to probably Wasteland their Carpathusian Forest and play 2 Engineer Plagues. This opens me up to Greenland plus Tranquil Domain, but I would still have the Muse in play, so wouldn't be the end of the world. And if they don't have specifically that, they have virtually no chance to win this game. I draw some more cards off Muse. They can tap my Factory. I draw Spectre. I draw Curse Scroll. Some real bangers. And I'm assuming I just play both of those. Yep. And that is the end of that game. So they didn't have the most aggressive draw. They had the Lackey. I had the answer for it. And then we just kind of both didn't do much for a while, and I snuck a Graveborn Muse into play. They whiffed horribly on their Ringleader, and that was pretty much it, which does seem to be what happens when they board in a bunch of these disenchant effects. Or it seems like it happens a lot. More than you would think it should. And the only other thing interesting about this game, I guess, was Graveborn Muse. I did open myself up to a sequence of plays that would have been pretty bad for me if they had them, but it would have been pretty unlikely. And they didn't have them. And then Graveborn Muse kind of sealed the deal. So that's that game. Game 3, I'm on the draw for this one. I draw a hand with no lands in it, so that's a mulligan. And I draw this hand. A little sketch, but I don't think I can really mulligan. The question is, what do I put back? With this particular hand, I think I would just have to put back Dark Ritual and hope and pray that I can withstand, or my opponent doesn't have a lackey. They played first, but maybe I can draw a scroll at some point. Maybe I can draw a plague at some point to turn things around. This hand's looking pretty bad, but I don't think I can go to 5. So I put back a swamp. Okay. I guess I figure I need the potential to ritual out a plague if I draw it, which is somewhat reasonable. No, I don't put back a swamp. Yes, I do. Okay, yep, that is what I did. I was reconsidering, I guess, but they do have the turn 1 lackey. They just always have it, but it isn't always good. And I draw a plague for my turn, so I'm very much rewarded for keeping Dark Ritual. And yeah, I have no other conceivable play other than ritualing out an Engineered Plague right now. So this deals with lackey, and it forces them to find a naturalize or be pretty hamstrung for the rest of the game. They have a port, they port me, and now I can play Therapy. I draw a Smother. This is all right. Given that I drew Smother, I think I might name Ringleader with this Therapy because I can smother a War Chief. I do, in fact, do that. They don't have a Ringleader though, but they do have a War Chief, so I'm regretting my decision, but that's the way it goes. So pass it back to them. They play a Mountain and they play a War Chief. There it is. I get bashed for 2. I draw a Therapy and I have to just smother this War Chief right now. Therapy is a good draw though, because then I can use that to take out Siege Gang Commander. They play Kaplusian Forest, and I think I know 2 of the 4 cards in their hand. They tap my swamp. I draw a Withered Wretch. So I'm just desperately aching for lands right now. I wonder if I should have put back Nantuko Shade. It's a consideration. I mean, I felt like I needed it to have something to flash back Therapy with, even though it's not ideal for that purpose. But anyway, I play a Therapy naming Siege Gang Commander. That's pretty much a forced play at this point. I cannot deal with the Siege Gang Commander right now. They naturalize my Engineered Plague, so that's gone. I name Siege Gang. They have Incinerator plus Sharpshooter. Not the best. Seems like something I could deal with. I'm going to need to draw some lands though. They play a Sharpshooter. That'll be good at killing my creatures. I draw a Swamp. So in this scenario, this is kind of an interesting spot because I kind of need to get some cards I need to get a card out of my hand in order to get Scroll active. And if I just play a creature and pass, it's going to die to Gem Pump on the cycle. So really I need to play Scroll, and then I need to play one of these creatures and sacrifice it to Therapy to get rid of Incinerator, because at least that way they don't also get to cycle and draw a new card. So that's what I need to do. The only question is, which one do I throw under the bus? In theory, Shade is the better creature to keep around. However, it does require a mana investment to keep it from dying to 1 damage. But I'll have Scroll active, so I probably will want to be scrolling. At the same time, eventually I will draw some more lands, which will allow the Shade to get pumped. So it's actually a pretty interesting and I think close decision which one of these to sacrifice. Let's see what I did. Looks like I sacked the Wretch. I mean, that does make some sense because the Shade is higher upside if the game goes on for longer. So I do that. I get rid of Gem Pump Incinerator. Turns out funny story. They had drawn another one. So even though I pretty much had to do that anyway to get rid of the first, it ends up being completely devastating for them because they lose 2 cards. And yeah, if that hadn't been the case, would it have been much worse for me? Yes, it would have. And maybe I would have lost the game to like a sequence of goblin draws, tempo draws. But that's why Cabal Therapy is very good. So those both go to the graveyard, and I pass the turn, which is pretty decent. They get in with their creatures. Yeah, I guess attacking there is fine, because if I kill the War Chief, then this untaps. So during my upkeep, I have to choose. I probably need to scroll one of these things, and I just have to figure out which one it would be. So I think in this spot, I think I just have to kill the War Chief for tempo purposes and worry about the shade later. So let's see what I did. Yeah, I did target War Chief. So I kill it. That untaps their sharpshooter. I draw a Graveborn Muse. It's actually going to be pretty good if I can draw land and play it. But that's a tall order because they do have this port. They play Piledriver. Yeah, and so now I'm in some trouble because they can port me. If I play Shade, it just dies to Sharpshooter. Oh, and actually, okay, yeah, this was a bit of a mistake. They attack with Sharpshooter. I think maybe they were just playing fast or didn't fully consider it, because that wasn't a good idea. Because now I can just play Shade from my hand, and you know, if I drawn a land, maybe it wouldn't have mattered, but I didn't. Or no, actually, it still would have mattered because they could untap, port me. I could pump in response, and they could Sharpshooter in response. Now, granted, that frees up my mana for the turn after, but either way, it would have been pretty tough to do. But I guess maybe they figured I just had to kill their Piledriver so that this would untap anyway. But I can't actually kill their Piledriver because I have too many cards in my hand for a scroll to kill anything. So anyway, instead I just play Shade. Now they're going to need to draw some way to kill the Shade because Sharpshooter is not going to untap. Instead they draw land. They get in with Piledriver. No, they don't get in with Piledriver. That's also fine. They tap a swamp, so I can pump my Shade for free. I draw a swamp, which is a great draw. And now the awkward thing is if I attack with Shade and they block, they untap Sharpshooter. I kind of have to keep up mana. So I think it's better to just get the Hypnotic Spectre into play and hope they don't draw anything of relevance for one more turn. So that's probably what I do. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I can't attack with Shade. So it goes to their turn. They draw a Goblin King, which is all right, but it doesn't actually do that much right here. They get in with Piledriver. I have to just take this. I can't block right now. I need to kill that Sharpshooter before I really do anything else. And it's actually, yeah, no, I can't block yet because that would untap the Sharpshooter. So that has to die first before I block. So it goes to my upkeep. They're going to tap my land, and I take this opportunity, I'm sure, to kill the Sharpshooter. So I name Graveborn Muse. That dies. I draw for my turn. It's a swamp, which is actually a pretty good draw. I just want lands at this point to deal with port and maybe play Muse and pump my Shade. There's a lot of stuff I can do with my mana. This is why I like playing at least 23 lands in this deck, by the way, because there's decks out there that mess with your lands and you want to be able to do stuff. So what's the play here? I guess I just hold back, probably planning to trade off Spectre with something, with the Piledriver, I guess, if they attack. They don't attack. Just play a land, so now it's back to me. I suppose I have the option of either playing Muse or shooting something. I think at this point, I mean, they have, if I play Muse, I'll have a pretty good set of defense against anything they could play except maybe Ringleader into Incinerator. Yeah, that would have to be that would be like the scariest sequence they could have. Looks like they don't port me, so that makes it easier. It makes it easier to make this decision. Not sure what happened there. Maybe they just figured at this point the mana didn't matter and it'd be better to tap down a factory if I drew it. But now I can just do it all because I happen to draw Dark Ritual. So I scroll their Goblin King and play Graveborn Muse. Just have to figure out. Eventually I have to count my mana and figure out that I can actually do that, and then I'll do it. Takes me a second. Okay, there's the Dark Ritual. They tap a land in response, but it's kind of too late now. I scroll away the Goblin King, turning Piledriver back into Squire, cast Graveborn Muse. Now I can get in with Spectre, and I'm at a huge advantage now because I have a bunch of creatures in play and I'm drawing 2 cards a turn, and I have a scroll. They take a draw, they play a land. They're flooding out pretty badly here, but you know, that happens sometimes. I draw off Muse, Wasteland, I draw Spectre, waste their port, and I guess I just play, no, I guess I scroll. Yeah, I guess that's the safest play. I scroll Spectre. I probably should have just played Spectre instead of wastelanding them in retrospect. But I guess leaving up Pump for Shade is also fine. They get in with my creatures. I leave up a Pump on Shade in case they draw into Pyrokinesis or something. Then they would only be able to kill 1 of my creatures. But they draw nothing of note and they lose the game. So yeah, they flooded out a bit at the end there, but you can see how it was pretty tight early on in the game. There was a potential for me to get tempoed out, but we managed to sort of slow the assault and take over the game later on. So one thing worth noting about that previous match is that if I had kept the Withered Wretch instead of the Nantuko Shade and used the Shade to do the flashback therapy, I think I would have been in better shape if my opponent had not tapped their Sharpshooter. Like with Wretch in play, I could have held off Sharpshooter and Piledriver, or at least like I wouldn't have been forced to just throw my creature in the graveyard if my opponent hadn't tapped their Sharpshooter to attack. So it ended up being okay because they did that, but otherwise, kind of seems like maybe Wretch was the better choice to keep. But you know, at the time, it wasn't totally obvious that was true. But like Shade has higher upside, but it is easier to kill, especially with a Sharpshooter around. Anyway, so for this match, the game 1 got messed up in the replays, so we're going to have to start in game 2, and I actually don't remember who won game 1. So I guess we'll see. This is a fine hand. Looks like I'm on the play. I don't think I knew what my opponent was playing, but I think I'm sort of obligated to therapy here because I have a 2 and 3 mana play. So I have to just fire it off. Oh wait, what am I talking about? This is game 2, so I do know what my opponent's playing. Sorry, I should have thought about what I would have named here, but I guess Pyrokinesis makes a good amount of sense because I have the Wretch to block a turn 1 Lackey, but that could get Pyrokinesis away, and then if I play Hypnotic Spectre, it could kill both of them, which would be really bad. So that's what I named. I whiffed. Their hand is Piledriver, Ringleader, Prospector, Naturalize, and some lands. So sorry, I should have spent some time thinking about how to decide what to name there. But anyway, hopefully the explanation after the fact is at least somewhat helpful. And so my opponent plays Mountain, and they play Skirt Prospector. I draw a Swamp, and I play Withered Wretch. At some point, I'm going to need to kill that or get rid of that Ringleader, but I don't have to do it right now. Draws and plays Wooded Foothills, gets their Forest, and plays Piledriver. So they could play Ringleader next turn if they wanted to by sacking a Prospector. So I'm probably going to need to just sack this Withered Wretch to get rid of that. So I think interesting, I guess I'm not doing that. Okay, I didn't do that. I mean, on the one hand, it's not great for them to sack Prospector because then they are down a Goblin. So I guess maybe that's why I'm assuming they wouldn't want to do that. But it's a little risky. I mean, not risky exactly, but it's, I don't know. It's probably right to not do it, now that I'm thinking about it. Anyway, so they go to their turn, and they cycle Gem Palm. So that's pretty good. Gets rid of my Spectre. That's just, you know, a risk I had to take. I didn't really have any way to play around that one. Didn't have anything else I could do. So do that, and they play a mountain. All right, so now I'm in some trouble. Gonna need to draw pretty well for the rest of this game in order to win. Curse Scroll is definitely a first step, although I know they do have Naturalize. So what could I do here? I could just scroll their Piledriver and then get rid of their Ringleader or their Naturalize with Withered Wretch and hope that scroll, like if I get rid of Ringleader, we're sort of even, but they could have some other good cards in their hand. So I think it makes sense to get rid of the Naturalize and just hope that scroll can sort of take care of the game, take care of the rest of their cards. It's a little sketchy, but I think it's probably my best bet here. And the question is, do I sack Factory or do I sack Wretch? I actually think it might be right to sack Factory because I'm going to want to be using my lands to activate Scroll, and I have, yeah, I don't know, they're kind of similar otherwise. But Wretch does not require any mana to be put into it in order to be a creature. So that's probably, well, no, actually I can't do that right now because I need the land to play Scroll and activate. So yeah, never mind. I guess it has to be Wretch. Let's see what I do. Looks like I get in with Wretch, presumably. Yeah, they're not going to want to trade off Piledriver with it. So guessing I get 2 damage in here. Yep. And now I'm going to sack Wretch. All right, let's see what I go after here. I did go after the Naturalize. So they have Siege Gang and Ringleader. So I do get the Naturalize, but it's going to be a bit of a tall order for Scroll to handle all of these other things, but I have no choice. I got to try. So I scroll down Piledriver and let them take their turn. They play a Port. It's going to make blocking with Factory pretty tough. And it looks like here they're going to try and play Siege Gang instead of Ringleader, which is kind of strange, but that does seem like what they're doing. I guess they just think Siege Gang is really way better. But I can kill the Siege Gang. So anyway, I think I have to do that during my upkeep, which I do. And now I have Factory, which can force them to tap it, and then I drew Engineered Plague, which is obviously nuts. So I play a swamp, and we get to take their turn. They go ahead and tap Factory, which is also pretty strange. I mean, isn't it better to play Ringleader? I guess maybe they have another play. Okay, they have Goblin King. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So they do thwack me pretty good here, no doubt. And this Foothills is gone, so they have 1 card I don't know. They get in for 6, I go to 13. However, this turn's going to be fairly devastating. So I could Plague plus Smother, or I could Plague plus Scroll. There is a small, is there any possibility of Smother getting stuck in my hand? Not really. I think I can play anything else. So I probably just Plague plus Scroll. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So that gets rid of all of those. Now they go ahead and play Ringleader. And I guess their other card isn't a land because you'd think they would want to leave up Port. They reveal the Tranquil Domain, 2 lands, and a Goblin Lackey. Not ideal, but this seems to be what happens with Ringleader after sideboarding. Okay, they have another Port, so that would explain it. And they're playing a Piledriver. Trying to get in, trying to force some damage through, but without an answer to the Plague and with Scroll, it's going to be tough. I draw Swamp, play Swamp, shoot the Ringleader. I guess I go ahead and smother the, no. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to smother Piledriver right now. I can wait and see what happens. Get in with Factory. Well, I can. If they want to block, they can. They don't. Pass it over. If they draw and they play Tranquil Domain. Okay, so they've gotten rid of my Plague now. So that's something. I go ahead and smother the Piledriver because I guess I'm going to want to. And they play a Lackey. So now it's just a matter of trying to get this game over with as soon as I can. I draw Swamp, and I guess I just leave up Scroll activation. They have the ability to tap my Factory, so no point trying to attack with it. I scroll their Lackey, they don't play anything, go to my turn. They don't tap my factory, so I just can play a land and pass the turn. They draw and pass. I scroll them. It's not clear what they have, but it's probably more lands. Possible they're holding a Gem Palm Incinerator. Or it just could be goblins that they're trying to like play a bunch of them in one turn and overwhelm me. Since if they play them one by one, they'll get mowed down by Curse Scroll and or Smother. I draw land and play that, pass the turn. They draw land, they play land, they play War Chief. I scroll it. Like you could make the argument that I should scroll them and use the Smother because there might not be that many other targets for Smother, but I don't know. I think this game still has the potential to grind out if they get rid of my scroll. So I think I want to keep my removal spells. I draw a second factory, which isn't bad. So I play that and I guess try to attack for some reason, but they just tap it. I guess I have plenty of mana, so might as well. Okay, they draw and they do play a Naturalize on my scroll. So I scroll them. I feel pretty good about saving my Smother. And now it's my turn. They don't have any follow-up. I draw a Withered Wretch, which is a Grizzly Bear, and they are at 10. I play Wretch, pass the turn. They don't bother tapping. I don't bother animating. They play a Mog Fanatic as their last card. Draw Plains, get in with my Wretch. They decide to take the damage. I guess they feel like they need a critical mass of goblins in play, and Mog Fanatic is the first step in that. Okay, they draw another Mog Fanatic, and I smother this one. So that forces them to sort of get 2 for 1 in order to deal with this Withered Wretch. This was maybe not a great play. I probably should have just let them do that. 2 for 1 themselves normally without using my smother. In retrospect, I think I wasn't thinking about that very clearly, about what would happen there. So yeah, I just kind of threw away my smother for no really good reason because, I mean, I guess in theory they could have just attacked me back, but I was leading the damage race, so they couldn't do that for too long. So yeah, it wasn't a great idea. I draw Engineered Plague. So, you know, if I'd played that, they would have just sacked both Fanatics, so I would still have a smother in my hand though, which would be better than not having one. So don't do that one. Don't imitate that play. They draw and play nothing. I draw a Dark Ritual, pass the turn back. I'm holding the Plague because there's no real reason to play it out yet. And I could draw a discard spell to take away a Naturalizer or Tranquil Domain before playing it. Okay, they play a War Chief and I guess click through their attack. Or no, yeah, I guess they don't want to have to proactively tap my factory if I animate it to block. So yeah, they can't really attack because then I would just attack them back for way more and they're at 8. So I take it back, that was fine. They don't have this lackey anymore. I draw a Wasteland, which is pretty clutch actually, because now my factories can actually start doing something. So I Wasteland one of their ports, they tap one of my factories. And do I play the Plague here to kind of slow things down? I guess I do. All right, and they concede to that. I guess they're tired of dealing with Engineered Plague. Although I wouldn't have killed their War Chief straight up, but I mean, I wasn't in an advantageous position here, but this might have been a little bit of a premature concession. All right, so we're on to game 3. I open with this hand. It's on the draw. It's a bit slow. My opponent mulliganed to 6. I don't know. It's tough to keep this hand because has no acceleration. It does have 3 lands, but it has all 3 and 4 drops. So I guess I mulliganed and I end up with this hand, which isn't a ton better, but it at least has a 2 mana card to play. So I'm assuming I kept this and put back a swamp. My opponent, meanwhile, has gone to 5. So if they have the Broken Lackey draw, I don't have much in the way of resistance, but otherwise the hand's okay. They play a Mountain and they play a Mog Fanatic, which is, importantly, not Goblin Lackey. So I don't care too much about that one. I do draw a Curse Scroll, and I guess I'm faced with the decision of whether to hold it or just play it out. hold it with the idea that I might be able to get them to discard a disenchant effect if they have it. I feel like holding it's like pretty reasonable here because I don't really have much else going on anyway. So I probably would say that I should hold it, but let's see what I did. Yeah, I did hold it. I think that makes sense here because I have some discard coming up with Rats and Spectre, and it's not really going to be able to shoot anything for a while. I'm going to place a Mountain and a Goblin Piledriver. So they've got an aggro draw. It's pretty solid. I do have this Rat for them, and then I drew a Dark Ritual. So the question is, do I just ritual out this Spectre or do I just play a Rat? Those are kind of my options. I kind of think I'm supposed to just play Rat because that kind of blunts the Mog Fanatic and it makes sure that I'm at least going to get one card with this Rat before they empty their hand. Let's see what happened. Yeah, I do just play Rat. So I rat away a Restating Port, which is pretty solid. And yeah, if they roll out a War Chief here, then I'll take some damage and reevaluate, I guess, but see what happens. It would have to be their last two cards. Play a Wasteland and War Chief. All right, so they mulled to 5, but they got me under the gun here. But they are totally out of cards. So they get in, they sack their Fanatic, which makes sense. I mean, I would have just blocked the Fanatic anyway, but that's what they did. I draw a Swamp, and what can I do here? If I Ritual Hippie, scroll, I still can't scroll, so I think I probably just play Hypnotic Spectre. Then I can save my Ritual to try and make sure that I get to activate scroll the next turn. And I will plan to trade off this Hypnotic Spectre probably because I'm already at 12. They draw a Ringleader, which is a pretty good draw. Let's see what they revealed. A War Chief and Triangle Domain, Restating Port, Karplusan Forest. So those three are gone, but they do have a War Chief now. A card I would love to hit with Hypnotic Spectre, however, I'm taking a lot of damage if I do that. And it is probably not feasible. I would take 10 and go to 2. Yeah, that's not really an option. So I have to just block Piledriver here. 2 is simply too low. Draw for my turn, and I draw Vendetta. It's pretty solid. It's going to deal me some more damage, but it will help to stem the bleeding here. Unfortunately, everything has haste, but so I think what I do now is I just Vendetta the War Chief right away. Yep. And then I will scroll the other War Chief, I guess. Once they play it, they draw a Mountain. They play War Chief. I will Ritual and scroll the War Chief and take 2 down to 4. So I've kind of stabilized, but I'm at a quite low life total. Draw for my turn. It's a second scroll, which is actually pretty good. Or it will be at some point in the near future, because then I'll eventually have double scroll active. So I scroll the Ringleader and I play the other scroll and pass the turn over. They draw, not sure what they drew, they aren't playing it. I draw a Swamp, so I just pass the turn, because this way I can leave scroll up on their turn, and then next turn I can play Swamp and double activate scroll if I need to. Or activate 2 scrolls, I should say. They draw and do not play anything. I activate Curse Scroll. So at this point, you know, they could be trying to save up for one big burst, but more likely they have some green cards they can't play or a Siege Gang Commander that they can't play. Deal them 2. But yeah, I mean, they could have Lackey or something that they don't want to run their cards into a Curse Scroll until they can maybe draw something to kill them. Could be anything, really. I draw a Graveborn Muse. Pretty good card. However, it's a little scary to play since I am at 4 life. So I guess I just pass the turn and assume that I will never be playing this Graveborn Muse. Because, yeah, I mean, I could double scroll it, but it also makes using scroll a little bit more awkward. So I don't know. I think it could have been safe to play it here, but it's a bit risky. If they do go War Chief into Piledriver, I would just die. Or I guess I wouldn't die, but I would be in trouble. They don't have a War Chief currently that I know about. That's from earlier. All right, so they're just going to cycle a Gem Palm Incinerator and then play a Mog Fanatic. Which does make me feel a little bit better about not playing Graveborn Muse. So I kind of have to kill this Mog Fanatic. So I will. Scroll the Fanatic, scroll them, untap, draw an Antico Shade. That's a good card. That will help get the game over more quickly. Pass the turn back to them. They draw and play a Goblin Matron. Okay, so they're digging. They're digging for something. Or searching for something, I should say. They search for Mog Fanatic. Yeah, so that's pretty annoying. They might just burn me out. Although that's only their third. So even if they are running 4, they can only get me to 1 in theory. They pass. I go ahead and scroll the Fanatic, presumably at the end of the turn. They shoot me in response. No point shooting the Shade because I can just pump it. I draw a Hypnotic Spectre. So I play Hypnotic Spectre and I don't attack with Shade. I guess I have scroll activation up. It's a little bit of a weird play. I feel like I probably should have scrolled the Matron and attacked. And, you know, if they can get rid of my Shade, so be it. I guess that would still lose to War Chief into Piledriver, so maybe that's a good reason not to do it, I guess. So I missed out on a little bit of damage, but I'm playing it super safe here to make sure I don't die, which seems reasonable. All right, so I scroll. That could have been a window for them to Pyrokinesis, have a pretty good Pyrokinesis if they had it, although I would still have 2 scrolls up. But they didn't do that. I draw Swamp, which is a good draw, as long as I can keep my hand to 1 card, keep this Muse in my hand. Play a Swamp, and now I can get in with both. And I think I pump my Shade. I guess I just pump my Shade up to 6 and leave open 1 scroll activation. That's pretty safe, yeah. Hit them with Hypnotic Spectre. They were holding a Siege Gang Commander. So, you know, I guess they have gotten a little bit unlucky to not play it before now, but they were drawing other cards like Matron or Fanatic or whatever. And yeah, Goblins is a deck that plays a bunch of 1-drop. It plays 1-drops and it plays 5-drops, and sometimes that doesn't work out great. So that is what happened here. They draw and I guess have nothing of note and concede the game. So they probably, you know, who knows what they had, but they probably just had some green enchantment destruction. So yeah, that's that match. Double scroll has been, or I mean, scroll in general has been pretty crucial so far. Hopefully that's been evident. And yep, so has Spectre and so has Engineered Plague. So 1 more to go. All right, so this is the 4th match. Unfortunately, game 1 is messed up again. I think basically for the replays, game 1 doesn't work if you're in the top 8. That seems to be the trend. I've tried looking at some of the replays before, and that seems to be the pattern. So that's a little annoying. Anyway, I lost game 1. I basically got, actually, I don't even remember what happened, but I lost game 1. So we're in game 2 here. So I open this hand of 2 baubles, a wretch, 3 swamps, and a wasteland. I think this is a keep. It's not, you know, the greatest hand in the world, but if you're playing Urza's Bauble, you kind of have to be willing to keep some hands that have a bunch of Urza's Baubles in them and pray that they turn into something reasonable. I guess you could mulligan this hand, but Wasteland's probably going to be good. Wretch is solid. It's a way to block a lackey on the play. So that already by itself basically makes it a keep if the rest of it is remotely reasonable, and I think this is. And if we do draw a therapy, the bauble is going to be very good. So I lead with a swamp and an Urza's Bauble and another one and pass the turn. My opponent plays Skirk Prospector. All right, so not a lackey, but at least we had it covered. I reveal a Piledriver with the bauble and a Pyrokinesis with the other bauble, so something to keep in mind. I draw Snuff Out and Plague Bearer. Snuff Out's quite good. Plague Bearer is pretty marginal. And then I just play the Withered Wretch. Swamp for the turn. They play a Wasteland. They play their Piledriver. No surprise there. And pass the turn. We draw another Swamp, so not ideal. So given that we have nothing much going on, the only play that makes sense is to Wasteland their Wasteland. I don't want to play Plague Bearer because then I'll get 2 for 1 by this Pyrokinesis, and I also don't really need to play it for any reason. I mean, if I didn't have this Wretch in play already, I guess I could have used it to kill Skirk Prospector. But I think Wastelanding is more important, and I don't have it in play already anyway, so I do that and hang back with the Wretch to discourage any attacking, pass the turn. There's no real need to use Snuff Out yet. I mean, if they want to sack some Goblins to play something, that's good for me, so I think that's fine. They play a Mog Fanatic, and do they want to get in? No, they don't want to. So we go back to my turn. I draw Engineered Plague. Well, look, that's why they're in the deck. So I play that. I play a Swamp and I play that. That's another reason it's not horrible to keep a hand with 4 lands in it, because the Goblins deck does play Rishon and Port, and Engineered Plague is your best card. So the best way to win is to ensure that you can play it. Now, obviously, you can go too far. You can still flood out sometimes, but it's good to be able to play Engineered Plague. So I play that. They hit me with the Mog Fanatic in response, and then it enters play. Names Goblin, Skirk Prospector dies, Piledriver turns into an 0/1. And I think here I'm ready to attack. Yeah, because now they can't really pressure me back very well. So I get in for 2. They don't want to kill it with Pyrokinesis, so they have to take 2. They play Mountain. They play good old Goblin Warchief. So this is a pretty good spot to use the Snuff Out on Warchief, because not only does it kill it, but it prevents Piledriver from attacking for any damage. So I do that, and go back to my turn. I draw a Drain Life. So there's a little bit of a nombo with Engineered Plague, in the sense that you can't gain as much life with it, since it's shrinking the toughness of your opponent's creatures, but still a good card to have. I think I don't play it here, because there's a chance there's a higher value target, or I could maybe target my opponent at some point down the line. So I just attack and pass. I don't play Plague Bearer again because I don't want to get 2 for 1 by Pyrokinesis. I want to make them play that before I play another creature if I can. They play another Warchief. All right, so they get in for 3 damage here, because the Piledriver gets pumped by Warchief. So I take that down to 12. And I guess I exile some cards for fun. Don't think it's ever going to be relevant against Goblins. And then I draw an MTGO Shade, which again, I have to be careful about because I know they have Pyrokinesis in their hand. So what could I do? I could either play Shade and leave up mana to pump it, or I could drain the Warchief. I think it's better to drain the Warchief, so I'm guessing that's what I do. Yeah, I drain the Warchief for 1, go back up to 13. And I think I still attack here. Yeah. Keep putting pressure on them. If they have another Hasty Goblin, it's going to be kind of annoying, but they may not, or they may. And they decide to concede. I don't know what was in their hand. I mean, I know there was a Pyrokinesis and maybe some other cards. Seems like a little bit of a premature concession, but it wasn't, depending on what they had, maybe they had nothing of relevance. Yeah, I mean, Shade was going to be good because I was going to be able to play it with mana up to pump. Although as long as they have Pyrokinesis, I have to be a little careful. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they have because it seems like they missed a land drop. Maybe it could just be a bunch of 1-drops that died to Engineered Plague. Anyway, that was that game. All right, so game 3 in this match. I'm on the draw this time. I open this hand. This hand is pretty good, I would say. It has Wasteland to mess with their mana. It has Vendetta to answer a turn 1 Lackey. It has Nantuko Shade with a decent amount of mana to support it, to hopefully grow it out of range of some damage-based removal. And it has an Urza's Bauble, which could be anything. So not that, there's better hands, but I think it's a keep. My opponent mulligans to 6. They play a Mountain, and they do indeed play the Lackey. Good old Lackey. So I draw a Cabal Therapy. Very interesting opening sequence here. So I have some options here. I don't have as many options as it might seem, because my opponent has 4 cards. I can't really risk naming the wrong thing with therapy and letting the lackey hit me and potentially them putting in something very good. So I pretty much have to kill lackey. And then probably next turn I can reevaluate. So the question is, do I want to kill lackey and do something else? I could kill lackey and play shade. There's not that many ways it could go wrong, but they could basically have exactly Mog Fanatic, and that could kill my Nantuko Shade. I could Ritual Vendetta and Cabal Therapy right now, but then I'm sort of wasting a mana on the Ritual. And on turn 2, there's not that many cards that I care about. Again, the goal is to make Goblin Piledriver into a Squire. So I don't really need to hit that with Cabal Therapy, and that's not really what I'm trying to hit. So for all those reasons, I think the play is just to Vendetta and then Therapy next turn and keep my Dark Ritual. I do play Urza's Bauble, and I do use it, I guess, just to get a better idea of what's going on, but it could also be defensible to wait, honestly, until the end of their turn. But so I see Siege Gang Commander. So now that I've seen that, there's still really no reason to do it right now, especially since that's the card I saw. So I think I just pass and plan to Vendetta the lackey. I draw a swamp. So they attack, I Vendetta, and now what are they going to do? They play a port, and they play, speak of the devil, Goblin Piledriver. I draw a Hypnotic Spectre. So here I'm paid off handsomely for waiting on my Ritual, because now instead of just playing a Shade and like leaving a mana up to pump, I can play Hypnotic Spectre. I could even Ritual out the Spectre and Wasteland them. And in fact, that's probably the better thing to do, because A, it gives them one more turn to draw another Siege Gang Commander, since that's definitely what I'm going to name with Cabal Therapy. And B, if I put them back down to 2 mana, there's really not anything they can do to punish my Hypnotic Spectre. They could Pyrokinesis, but they would always be able to do that. I guess they could use Siege Gang Commander to exile 2 the Pyrokinesis, which would take away the information about it. So that would be the way I would get punished for that. But besides that, there's not too much that can go horribly. So that's probably the play. No, looks like it's not. I went with Therapy, possibly to play around that scenario with Pyrokinesis that I mentioned. This also lets me see if they have a Pyrokinesis, so I could try to bait with a Nantuko Shade and keep my Spectre, although that might not even be correct. It might be better just to play the Spectre and make them do it. Anyway, this gives me the most information to make my next decision with. So I do Therapy, naming Siege Gang Commander. They reveal Gem Palm Incinerator and Goblin Warchief as their remaining 2 cards. Neither of those is an immediate threat, so I'm pretty sure I would just play Hypnotic Spectre here. And now if they draw land, they can play Warchief, but they cannot profitably cycle Gem Palm right now, so that's really good. And yeah, in retrospect, I think maybe overall the right play is to do the play with Wasteland, just Wasteland them, but I don't know. This also works. So they draw a Mog Fanatic and play that. So this does give them a little bit more attacking power, but it lets me work over their hand and their mana base pretty extensively. Like a land would have been better for them there to get Warchief into play, but that's not what they drew. So I attack with Hypnotic Spectre. It hits. They discard Warchief. So now they would be able to cycle and kill Hypnotic Spectre next turn, except that I have a Wasteland. So I have the choice of either playing my other Spectre or just Wastelanding them. If I Wasteland them, it's a little bit dangerous because then they can draw a land and cycle into Gem Palm and kill my Spectre. So for that reason, I'd probably just play this other Spectre and let them cycle Incinerator. Or actually what I could do is Wasteland them and play Shade and sack it to get rid of Incinerator. And that does leave them with 2 creatures in play, but I can play a Spectre afterwards and then make their attacks impossible. And they'll be down to 1 land right then and there. So that's probably what I do. Let's see. Yeah, that is what I do. So it's important not to get too hung up on Nantuko Shade, like getting value later. Although that probably might also be fine in this scenario. But if you have a threat controlling their hand and beating them down, you don't necessarily need you don't need to play out and keep and play all your threats. You just need the total state of the board to be advantageous for you. And this is more advantageous than me having a Shade and them having a Gem Palm Incinerator in their hand. It's better for us. It's better for me for neither of those cards to be around. Or I'm trading. It's advantageous to trade the Shade for the Incinerator is what I'm getting at. So I do it. Then I play Wasteland. I Wasteland their port. Just to make it clear, it's advantageous because this Spectre is doing everything for me. So I have the Spectre. I have one in the clip to stop their attacks. So once I play that next turn, if the board just kind of stays as it is, I will win. Because if they attack with both, I just block the Fanatic, and then they can't attack with Piledriver anymore because it's a Squire. Just to fully explain the situation. And they can't really play most of their cards because they're down to one land. All right, so they have very few outs at that point. Their outs are basically like another Mog Fanatic, and that's really about it. Or like drawing some lands into something else, but that's going to take some time. So they get in for some damage. I take 4. I draw a Diabolic Edict. They don't play their card. I get in with Spectre. It's a Goblin Piledriver. So they actually would have been able to play that if I hadn't wastelanded them off of their port. So it ended up being pretty valuable to do that. I play a land, and I guess I'm playing a little scared here, but it's fine. I think it's probably safe to play the Spectre in this situation, but I decide to Edict instead, which is also totally reasonable. I mean, it saves the most potential damage. If I'd played Spectre, they attack with both. I like block Fanatic. They shoot me. It would put me down to 11. I mean, I still think that's pretty high lift total, but whatever. So I do Edict them. They got to lose their Fanatic, and they can only attack for 1. I draw a Graveborn Muse. I attack them, get rid of their card. It's a War Chief. I play another Hypnotic Spectre. Pass. They draw. They concede. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much over. It's pretty much over when I successfully wastelanded them off of being able to play anything. Now, to be fair, their hand wasn't that amazing this game. But if they'd cycled an Incinerator into something, maybe they would have got some lands. I don't know. Not the greatest example of a competitive game, but the point is Spectre can be very good. Using Wasteland on their lands can be good. And having a removal spell for their having a removal spell for their Goblin Lackey was very crucial. And a lot of Goblins' hands are like this. They're very reliant on Goblin Lackey to do a lot of heavy lifting. And that's just the nature of the Goblins' deck. They rely on Lackey to get 4 and 5 drops into play. And if you can break that up and put a clock on them and make them discard cards, the awkwardness of their hands can be very, very bad for them. So that's what you want to try and do. All right, I will return with a wrap up. All right, so what can we conclude broadly about the matchup after watching some of these replays? And some of this is sort of new to me, or at least I'm only thinking about it explicitly after kind of seeing the way these matches played out. The first is that game 1 is going to be significantly worse than games 2 and 3. This is because for a couple of different reasons. One is that you have not had a chance to board into your Engineered Plagues yet, which is one of the best cards against Goblins. And the other is that you still have 4 Duress in your deck, which is basically a dead card. So those two things combine, and also if you're playing stuff like Knight of Stromgald that you might want to board out too, your game 1 configuration is probably not going to be optimized for beating Goblins. So that game's going to be tough. On the flip side, if you can win game 1, then you should have a very good chance of winning the matchup. So that's the first, I guess, somewhat obvious conclusion. The other is that the games do tend to look rather lopsided one way or the other. And I think this is because of the type of deck that Goblins is. It's very much a sort of snowballing advantage kind of deck, either with Goblin Lackey into, whatever, Siege Gang or Ringleader refilling their hand. If they can, there's certain key inflection points that make the Goblins deck much more likely to win if they can do their thing. Whether that's connecting with Goblin Lackey, getting a bunch of cards off Ringleader, resolving a Siege Gang commander, hitting for a big chunk with Piledriver, and then it's very difficult for the opponent to recover if some of these things have happened, or even porting down their lands or wastelanding their lands. On the flip side, if you can prevent those certain key things from happening, your chances of winning increase dramatically against goblins. So if you can keep them from hitting you with a Goblin Lackey, if you can kill multiple creatures with a Engineered Plague, or at least keep those creatures from dealing you much damage, if you can preemptively discard a Goblin Ringleader or Siege Gang commander, I've mentioned this already in the intro, but if you can turn Lackey into a Mons Goblin Raiders and Ringleader into a Squire, that's a great way. Pretty much the main way to beat a Goblins deck. So this deck's pretty well equipped to do that. You should try and do that. And that if you do successfully accomplish this, it will lead to the game's looking rather lopsided and Goblins not looking like it's doing a whole lot. But you have to keep in mind even though it can look lopsided, they were only one small variation away from snowballing in the other direction. So if they had hit you with a Lackey, maybe that would have been totally different. Or if they had successfully gotten to Gem Palm Incinerator away your blocker and hit you, Gem Palm Incinerator is a really great example of this, because the difference between it killing your creature and allowing them to connect with a big Piledriver hit, or with a Lackey, or just a generic attack for a lot of damage, versus it just cycling and doing functionally nothing and wasting 2 mana from them, that's a huge difference. Or if you can just discard it and prevent it from killing your creature, and then that creature, for example, if it's a Hypnotic Spectre, gets to start attacking them and tearing their hand apart, or even a Withered Wretch to put some pressure on them before they can draw out of it. I attack with Withered Wretch in some of these games. So yeah, the games can look lopsided, but they are actually closer than they may appear. So having the right thing at the right time is extremely crucial, and building your deck with that in mind, especially the sideboard, is extremely crucial. What I'm trying to say here is you skimp on Engineered Plague at your own risk. I'm only playing 3 in this version, and I was only playing 3 in this last version. That was in the last 2 games. In the previous games I had 4, but I do have the 4 baubles. But anyway, the point is, and only 2 rituals. So yeah, the point is you are taking a little bit of a calculated risk. I built this sideboard and deck as kind of considering that I wouldn't play against goblins that much, and I didn't. I only played against it once, so that was true. But there are costs and benefits to everything you include or don't include in the deck, I guess is what I'm getting at. To talk about their sideboard cards briefly, as you saw, sometimes they had Naturalizes, sometimes they had Pyrokinesis, but Naturalize is not necessarily the end-all be-all, because sometimes you can kill a goblin with Engineered Plague first, and even if they do Naturalize it after that, it's sort of done enough at that point, at least some of the time, either killing a goblin or preventing their attack. For example, if you play a plague, they untap, maybe they can kill it, but it shrunk down their force enough that they can't make an effective attack, and then you get one more attack in with your Hypnotic Spectre, or it buys, they have to spend their turn naturalizing, and then that buys you a turn to therapy something else away from their hand. Don't get me wrong, it's better if it stays in play, but I'm just saying it can still be good even if they do get rid of it. And then the other thing is that you have all this discard to try and get rid of a Naturalize before they can cast it sometimes. And it's kind of the same deal with Pyrokinesis. It can be good. It's something to keep in mind and try and be aware of and play around if you can. Sometimes they'll have a Lackey into Pyrokinesis for your blocker and to put in Siege Gang Commander, and you don't draw a plague, and that's a game a Goblins deck might win, and you just kind of have to be okay with the possibility that might happen. But you do have a lot of ways to try and prevent that from happening. Maybe they don't have the pyrokinesis. Maybe you have a therapy. Maybe you have a plague to follow it up. So pyrokinesis can be good, but it does cost them a card, and we are attacking their hand. So that's not trivial in this particular matchup. And Hypnotic Spectre, for example, if that's your only creature and they have pyrokinesis, they kind of have to use it on that, or it risks discarding the pyrokinesis. So something to keep in mind: if you're going to attack first before playing your other creatures, probably. I've made that mistake once or twice and don't want to do it again. Shade can pump out of range. Withered Wretch, it's a 2/2. Ravenous Rats can get a card out of their hand. Graveborn Muse is a 3 toughness creature, so in theory they can't kill that and a 2/2 with 1 pyrokinesis. So yeah, it can be good, but just keep it in mind, and you can play around it to a decent degree. On that same note, the information you get from Cabal Therapy against Goblins is, the information's always good, but I think against Goblins is especially good to know exactly what you have to play around and what you don't. And I know they draw a card every turn, but still, you get a lot of information from Bauble and Therapy in this matchup that you can leverage to your advantage in a way that is even greater than usual against Goblins, I think. So yeah, I guess that's the main conclusions. So hopefully this video can help you to defeat the green-skinned menace. And yeah, I think it's a solid matchup. It's scary, but I think it's ultimately not. It's not the scariest thing I would envision playing against in a pre-modern tournament potentially. So if you like the video, leave a comment, subscribe. Maybe I'll do another one of these on a worse matchup to try and Enchantress or Replenish. It just shows me losing repeatedly to them top decking Parallax Wave. That could be fun. But anyway, hopefully this was a good watch. And until next time, see you later.